Well, welcome everybody. I am Pastor Marcus Jennings of First Baptist Church, and we are excited tonight to bring to you this wonderful conversation called Leaders of the New School, Millennials and the Movement. And so during all that's happening around us in our world, I think this is a critical conversation, and I've invited some wonderful guests to share with us from the millennial perspective about the current movement that's happening in this country and even globally. And so I pray that you will come in with open hearts, open ears to receive what it is that they will share tonight. It's not too late to push that share button to tag someone or to start that watch party. So tonight, millennials. What is a millennial? So we have some credible sources that some have said 82, 2000. Some have said born between 81 and 96. And then another credible source says 80 to 2000. So we're going to go with 80 to 2000 as classifying it. So all the sources seem to be equally credible. So we'll just take that 20-year span. And so those who were born from 1980 to 2000 will be classified as millennials. So with that being said, I want to get right into it tonight. So I'm going to ask our distinguished panel to introduce themselves to us, and we'll go from there. So we'll start with Tori, and then we'll kind of go from there.
Good evening, everyone. My name is Tori Golden, and I am indeed a millennial. I represent 91. And I am the founder and CEO of Golden Solutions, LLC, as well as currently completing my doctorate in strategic leadership.
Very good. Welcome, Tori. Thank you so much for joining us. All right, Marie.
Hello, everyone. My name is Marie Maude. I am a Chattanooga native. I am a community activist, organizer, and I'm running for City Council District 8 in Chattanooga.
Awesome. Marie, thank you so much for joining us tonight. All right, Jess.
Hello, good evening, everyone. I am Minister Jessica Banks, and I represent the big city of Franklin, Virginia, born in 1987. And I have the honor of serving beside my lovely husband, Pastor James C. Banks Jr. at Shiloh Baptist Church. Yes.
Shiloh, represent. Thank you, Minister Jess, for joining. Pastor.
Because we're on the same Zoom. That's it. That is my boo. Yeah, my name is James C. Banks Jr. I was born in the rural area called Sampson County, but I had a city address, so we represent Franklin. I have the privilege of being the pastor of the Great Shiloh Baptist Church in Borgans, Virginia, and I'm currently at STVU obtaining my master's in divinity.
Awesome. Thank you, Pastor, for joining us. All right, Jared.
Well, hello, greetings, praise the Lord, everybody. My name is Jared Mays. Definitely excited to be here with all the panelists. I'm the youth president at my church, which is in Newport News, Virginia. So Living Waters Redeemed Apostolic Church of Christ, so shout out. Also working on my master's in public administration. And I want to say also too, I'm a proud member of the Hampton Roads Committee of 200 plus men. We'll kind of have a chance to maybe talk about some of the work that we're doing in regard to the movement and specifically some things that we're doing within the community.
Awesome. Thank you, Jared, for joining us. We love to hear about it. Pastor Lou.
What's good, people? I am Louie Gibbs, the founder and pastor of Radical City Church, pastor and activist, or pastor activist, not either or, but both and. I'm the husband of one wife, one beautiful wife, might I add, and I've got 4 children and no more, and not having any more. I'm done. And excited to be here to talk about some things that are plaguing our community, et cetera, and how we can help alleviate some of those issues.
Awesome. Thank you, Pastor Lou, for joining us. All right, if y'all can put those clap emojis together, give our distinguished panel a round of applause virtually. So we're gonna get right into it. So I'm gonna break y'all in easy. And then we're gonna get into it for real. All right, so millennials have lived through 4 decades, 80s, 90s, 2000s, and the 2010s. So for the following question, please respond to only one category between fashion or music. Of the aforementioned decades, which has been the greatest decade for music or fashion, and why?
Music is the 90s.
Not definitely the 90s. No doubt the 90s.
I think 90s period.
Okay.
Now, the fashion was questionable, but music, hands down, the 90s.
Okay.
I'm going to say music and fashion in the 90s. This is the birth of the hip hop era. This is when Black people make their way into the into mainstream fashion at a big, huge thing. Even though not many of us wore it, you got FUBU, Parasuco, Carcanai, all of that stuff happened in the 90s. Rockaware, that started at the end of the 90s. So I would say fashion and music is out of the 90s, even though I'm an 80s baby, 1980. I started this whole millennial conversation. 90s definitely had the best music and best fashion. We look at it now, look a little sloppy, but we were good though. It was good.
I mean,
Okay.
I don't really know about the fashion. As far as fashion is concerned, for me, I think that I'll say the 2010s was the fashion because we were no longer name brand based. So you see a lot more diversity in the way that African Americans are expressing themselves in the way that we look. So it's no longer about, you know, the Sean Combs, the Sean Johns, or the FUBUs, or the Rockawares. Now we're thrifting. Now you see people that are hipsters, and you see people that are skaters, and they're all African American. So I think that, and also natural hair movement, okay, that in and of itself, I think that there was a different level of self-acceptance for the African American community that started in the 2010s.
Okay. I'm going with 90s for music. I think that's like the consensus.
Yeah.
I'm gonna go with the 2000s for fashion. I'm gonna tell you why. The 90s, we had some questionable stylistic things going on. But in the 2000s, we brought back, of course, you know, fashion is cyclical, but we brought back some of the best of the former decades in the 2000s. So that's why I say pound for pound. Now, from a Black history standpoint, Lou, you killed it on the 90s thing with the whole Rockaware and Sean John, Carl Canai, all that. I'm with you from that standpoint. But just as far as overall, I got to go with 2000. But anyway, anybody else got want to weigh in on that?
Can we just shout out that Bill Clinton was president in the 90s, though?
He was. This is true.
And I'll say one more thing, just to be a little petty, Pastor Louie. If you stand up, you're probably wearing straight leg or slim jeans or pants. Okay, we'll leave it at that.
I'm definitely born in the 1980s, so the whole slim leg thing ain't what I do. All right, just understand that very clearly. Straight leg, yes. Slim, you'll never see Pastor Louie in a pair of skinny jeans. I'll be shaped like an upside down
You
panel.
might can do slim, but they're skinny.
Nah, buddy, we ain't gonna be able to do it.
You got them gap legs. Is that what you got, them wide legs and boot cut?
No, we don't do boot cut either. Like, so we can't do boot cut either. Straight legs is fine. Levi's, what is it, like 532 or whatever they are? Yeah. Straight leg is cool. But outside of that, we're not doing any of that. No, sir.
No skinny jeans. You know, I'm from the school of Husky.
Yeah, dog, you can't do that.
Not Husky. Oh, I do want to give a shout out to Jodeci boots from the 90s. That's all. I do. You want to give a shout out to Jodeci boots.
And Durango.
You said you shouting out Jodeci. Is that what you said, Pastor?
Hey, listen,
that's what he said.
Listen.
That's what he said.
I was at a different place in my life. back then. Hey, Jodeci, listen, y'all don't want these troubles with a boy band argument. Jodeci was it. All right.
It was, Pastor Jennings, I would like to also just shout out that Timberlands has surpassed all decades.
This is
For
true.
sure.
The
For
Butters
sure.
have made it from every
Absolutely.
They
single
have
decade.
stood the test.
And we
Absolutely.
still
New
rocking
York is
the joint.
single-handedly keeping them rocking. New York wear them year-round.
Year round.
Shout
I
out
wore 'em
East
year round.
Coast.
Right.
But none of y'all mentioned Baby Fat though and Fat Farm.
Ah.
Apple
Well,
bottom,
I said
sis.
before.
Apple bottom.
Because
Apple bottom.
I'm gonna jump out on a limb
Fat
and say
Farm,
that
though.
probably nobody on here probably wore Fat Farm except for Pastor Jennings, who just said, "Oh, Fat Farm." I never
No,
put
I
on
know.
Fat
She
Farm.
brought it to my remembrance. I didn't say I rocked it necessarily, but
Listen, I wore Fat Farm. I'm from Indiana, so Fat Farm was being worn.
I got
Okay.
you. He incorporated the whole Argyle thing. Okay.
That was dope. And I would like to just make an addendum to what I said after hearing what Tori said concerning fashion. Perhaps it was more of the Black entrance into the fashion world is why I'm giving them that deference. Because before then, we weren't the main ones. Like we were operating and running fashion. Russell Simmons, Sean Combs, Dame Dash, Jay-Z, like they were doing something that had never been done before.
That's true.
And now we see everybody who's thrifting after that and creating fashion after that. I'm going to say that the 90s hip hop era creating fashion is probably the reason why they're doing what they're doing now.
I hear you. All right. All right. The light stuff is over. Let's go. So, the following information, please pay attention. The following information can be found on blacklivesmatter.com. Black Lives Matter began as a call to action in response to state-sanctioned violence and anti-Black racism. Our intention from the very beginning was to connect Black people from all over the world who have a shared desire for justice to act together in their communities. The impetus for that commitment was, and still is, the rampant and deliberate violence inflicted on us by the state. I read that so I can ask this question. There are those who say, if Black lives really mattered, then what about Black on Black crime? How would you respond to those individuals, particularly considering the stated purpose of the Black Lives Matter movement provided by the Black Lives Matter founders? Go ahead, Pastor Lou.
I just wanted to raise my hand because I didn't want to jump out there. I'm faced with this question in the streets all the time. Y'all out here screaming about Confederate monuments and injustice, et cetera, and look at the number of deaths in Chicago and Black on Black crime across the country. My response to them is that's a family affair, right? Understand that the things that we're going through in our community are normally driven by systemic socioeconomic issues. Where there is, the other thing is that there's also white on white crime, but you don't hear anybody saying that Indian or Native American on Native American crime, Hispanic on Hispanic crime. And most of that, wherever there's poverty, you're going to find crime anywhere. So where you're saying that, it's honestly just a big blurb of ignorance because you don't understand what you're talking about. Furthermore, let's not deter from the point in hand. In our community, we're doing things that we need to do: voter registration drives, tutoring programs, trying to find jobs, recidivism programs, reentry programs, et cetera, to try to deter a lot of those things. But while we're doing that, we don't also need the white cops called to protect and serve those communities also killing us. So for me, it's a family issue. I can talk about my brother, but you can't.
Okay. Anybody else want to jump in there?
I would say that it is a yes and, okay? Two things can be true at one time. And that is we need to solve the African-American violence issue, but we're talking about this other issue right here. I think that I can't technically say that it is something that should be like an house type thing with African Americans, only because we are a community. That means that all things affects others, whether that's white on white crime, Hispanic on Hispanic crime, black on black crime, so on and so forth. We see this in government. We see this in communities being built. We see this in gerrymandering, right? So it all affects one and the other. However, what we cannot do is we cannot constantly raise another issue to dissuade, if you will, the conversation for the issue at hand. So yes, both, okay? And I see that you did make a point. We do have to handle this, but right now, our focus is on the state attacking the citizens. And when you are able to understand that these two entities exist and are true, separate, but very much equal conversations that need to be had, then you don't find yourself being the one at a cancer rally talking about how children need to be saved from abortion. Those are two very real issues, but let's stay on topic.
Thank you, Tori. I'm going to piggyback off of that. This is where the term tone deaf comes in. A lot of times that's just a way for any individual. Maybe someone genuinely cares and they want to bring that up. So I don't want to dissuade that, but the majority of the individuals that I may see that may come with that talking point, dare I say, it is just to throw you completely off and to change the narrative. So at this point, moving forward, let's stop trying and allowing people to change the narrative. Yes, that's something that we're going to address. Yes, that's something we're working on. Yes, the other things, but your whole intent in you asking that question is not because you want to answer. It's because you're not trying to talk about what we're trying to talk about. So again, I don't need to say anything more. Tori, I agree with you. I just want to add it on top of that. Let's not allow people to continue to be tone deaf and just say, no, this is what we're talking about right now.
I want to chime in. I agree with all that has been said. And I just want to, again, piggyback off what Jared said. It's almost as a statement to dismiss what's at hand. I mean, there's nothing new under the sun. I mean, we can go back to Moses when he was dealing with the Egyptian soldier that was fighting his brother. Then the next following day, there were two Hebrews fighting, and that statement was made. Yes, we know, as Tori said, there's yes and. There's something we need to deal with. But at this very moment, what is standing out, or what's the sore thumb in the room, is that Black Lives Matter, because if it mattered, then why are we the ones being racially profiled? Why are we the ones, just because we're house hunting, then we get the police called on us? Yeah.
May I jump in?
Yes.
So I think the first thing that we need to establish is crime has nothing to do with race. It has everything to do with proximity. That is the first point. I think the other thing that we need to understand is that often crime in the Black community is over sensationalized. And when you look at the statistics by race, you know, the African American community is very little over the white community, only in really two crimes. And that is burglary and that is murder. But the majority of violent crime, whether that is rape, whether that is grand theft auto with a weapon, going intent to go armed, the various scale of crime being done are being perpetuated by the white community. And so this falsehood of how we even discuss crime in and of itself, we have to establish it. Crime has to do with proximity. And then when we talk about Black people, I think the thing that we have to have a sub-level discussion is, what is the reason for these crimes? And so when you think about, why is this brother going and sticking up somebody in the community or breaking into somebody's house? He's doing that out of a necessity, a Black man, because he has no resources in his community, no job in his community, miseducation in his community. So by sheer of malfeasance when it comes to economic investment, agricultural investment, educational investment, when you have no options, family, you are going to find a way to creatively put food on the table for you. And so even the very reasons for the crime, when we look at our people, we have to see that it's poverty driven. It's this basic necessity of survival. We've covered this in psychology if we ever go into college, right? This either fight or flight. And Black people are in this fight or flight mode. Either we are going to survive or we're going to be eaten alive. But the average Black person, I don't think, wants to be a criminal. They are forced into criminality because of lack of resources. But the main point is crime has to do with proximity, nothing to do with race.
So I just want to chime in really, really quick. I really appreciate what you just said. It has to do with proximity and not race. We know that all races commit crimes. But let's just jump on the media for a moment. Look at what's shared more. Look at what is put out there more on the news and even social media, and who responds to it the most. And I believe, in addition to survival for us, it's a way for the government to also keep other races fearful of us, or to keep us at some type of place where we're always looked at as the bottom of the totem pole. So there's so many different avenues when you look at Black on Black crime versus, just saying, hey, Black Lives Matter. So just wanted to kind of chime in, because I appreciate that point about survival. But in addition to survival, we also have other forces working against us too, that actually want to make us the icon of just all bad things.
Yeah, I think that's an important point, Jess, Minister Jess and Marie, because if you can make me appear less than humane, and if you can dehumanize me, then I can justify not giving you human rights, because you're less than human. And so that's not a new phenomenon. That has been a historical strategy against people of color, to make them appear less than human, because if you're not human, then what do you mean human rights? You're not a human. So you're not qualified based on the dehumanization of a people. So anyway, okay. Great stuff. Anybody else want to say anything before we move on? Good deal. Let's go. Why is it important to engage in public protest, and what are the issues that should be at the heart of these protests?
I will jump in first here. We have tried, when we think about the steps that Dr. Martin Luther King Jr. talked about in his letter from a Birmingham jail, discovery of the injustices that are going on, gathering the facts, self-purification, and then direct action. I think our generation is at the direct action stage. We know the injustices, we've tried negotiating, we've gone through the self-purification. This is the time where we've just got to put immense pressure on the system to dismantle it. And I think the rallying cry right now is you can do nothing without resources. So the main thing that many people have been taking as a bannership right now is divestment and reinvestment to Black and Brown communities. I think our people need resources. And so it's very hard to change things if you don't have any funds. And so divestment from police budgets that have perfect example here in the city of Chattanooga. We spent in the last month and a half about $200,000 on bullets. Who is our police department going to war with? The Black community, right? So that $200,000 could buy books and computers and various different things that our communities lack. And so I think this is the time to put the pressure on, and at the same time divest from police budgets and reinvest into Black and Brown communities as a byproduct of a movement for Black lives.
Okay. I want to jump in, kind of piggyback off of something that Marie said. I can just tell you from when we're in the streets. First of all, I agree that this is a direct action generation. This is the generation that said, "You smack me and I'll smack you back," and we'll deal with what comes with that. The reality is, we scream, we yell. We knock over statues, we spray paint statues, we paint huge Black Lives Matter in the middle of the road, because here's the truth: pressure bust pipes. And the reality is, if you look across the country, the pressure that this generation has been putting on the government since George Floyd has began to turn a big ship. I'm not saying that we've won the war; we're still in war, but that pressure has begun to bust some pipes that are that's producing some things in the Black community. Concerning the reinvesting in the Black community, I'll go back to what I said earlier concerning Black on Black crime as it relates to it being a family affair. The truth of the matter is, we have been for so long looking for others to take care of us, that we have become dependent on a system to take care of us instead of creating our own systems within our community. We don't invest in our community. We don't buy in our community. I will call it this thing, and y'all can jump on my back if you want to. I think that some of us in our community suffer from assimilated Negro syndrome, where we arrive to a particular place and forget where we came from. So we no longer go back to those areas. I tell you, I'm a real estate investor. I am determined to buy up projects, privately owned projects across my city and across the country, because I want to be the black person who owns the place where my people live at, so that we can begin to put things in our community like education incubators, job incubators, parks and daycares on campuses where our people live at. Because here's the truth of the matter: those white people that own that, and I'm not saying that all white people are bad, but in a capitalistic society, right, those people who own those types of places are only there to get the government kickbacks, the tax cuts, and the subsidies that come from the government to house those people. They could care less about the mold that's growing in the apartments and the less than fair housing that we've been fighting for years. Let's not forget that we're in a country where the first time we become a person is at 3/5, and that's only to give the slave owners more voting rights. So systemically, there's a lot of stuff that's been bubbling over and over and over and over and over again. They killed Medgar, they killed Malcolm, they killed Fred Hampton, right? And they're continuing to kill us. And this generation is like, no more. Enough is enough. Step this way if you want to, and we're gonna come back at you.
I think that this topic is a very diverse topic and conversation. And the reason why it's very diverse is because this topic is something that affects all walks of life. So I'm a bit different from this generation in that I don't believe that creating our own systems and therefore thriving within is going to do much for us. Why? Because we only account for 11 to 13% of the population, with 50% of us being in jail, which means that we need more money, right? The money that we ourselves generate is not enough. So that means that whatever systems we create, they must be beneficial, not only for the African-American community, but also for those other communities as well. When you're thinking about the wealth that has been accrued by large banks that were started during the times of slavery and things like that, not white people just don't bank there. We bank there. Not only do we bank there, but the Native Americans bank there, and the Asians bank there, and you also have the Hispanics that bank there. And so the thing about the system that needs to be created is it needs to be created by Black people for everyone. That's the difference. And I think that we can prioritize our community for sure. However, for us to come to the conclusion, which is a very prevalent conclusion, of this separating and therefore generating of the Black dollar, yes, is this something that has worked before? Absolutely. I went to school in Tulsa, Oklahoma. I know firsthand the Tulsa, Oklahoma race riots. I know all about Black Wall Street. However, that's what worked then. And so what we have to do is we have to make a system and a way to make it work in today's society as of right now. When it comes down to our affluent Blacks, I think that there's division between those Blacks that choose to be on the streets and those that do not. However, even in the civil rights movement, everyone wasn't on the streets. You need someone without and within. And everyone's role is equally as important. So to my brothers and sisters that are out there on the streets, I commend you. Meanwhile, me, with my master's in public administration and my doctorate in leadership, I'm going into the system. I'm trying to figure out how I can work it from within. So when you come to me and you say, we need grants, and you say we need to get money in our schools, and you say we need to do all of these other things, you're not talking to someone who is not an ally. You need an ally within the system that you really don't feel like functioning in. And I know that for our generation, we're very tired of having to play the game. We are. However, I believe that there is a significant part of our movement that the civil rights movement had packed that we don't, and that's education. Because somewhere, someone lied and said we didn't need that. Somewhere, someone lied and said that we would be able to get ahead without getting a degree. And that's why you see, although African-American women are the predominant when it comes down to higher education, everyone has to get on board. Why? Because for other people and other cultures to take you seriously, and once again, I don't think that this is something that just has to be in America, because we have a whole continent that we're kin to, that is also looking for help. If you're not aware about the international climate of the African American diaspora, Africa is looking for partnerships with African Americans, because we constitute the majority of people on the face of the planet of the earth, yet the Jewish community holds 65% of the world's wealth. This is a community that went through the Holocaust, yet they hold 65% of the world's wealth. Why is that? It's because they have all of these systems, yes, banks, schools, hospitals, but if you're not Jewish, you can still go there because your money is still welcome here. So I think that this topic is very diverse in nature. It's multifaceted for sure, but I think that we cannot dare say that we don't need the people in the system. You need people within and without in order for this to work.
So
Ooh,
I totally
Lord
agree.
help me.
Totally agree. You have to know the system, and I think we have to take time to educate ourselves about the system. So I just spent 3 years serving in our local school board, just resigned last month. And what baffled me is that, so many people, to get back to your original question, Pastor, about protesting, I was out there in the street, but yet I was witnessing a system too that was ran by predominantly Caucasians, but the school system is majority African American. And it was disheartening to sit in board meetings and watch people who totally maybe didn't even have an understanding or know these kids, what their lifestyle is like, make decisions for this great body of children and the faculty and staff. So I think in order to move forward, we have to understand the system. I agree with you. We have to get in there. We have to know what the system looks like. In order to beat the game, we must understand the game rules.
So, go ahead.
Go ahead, Pastor Lou. Did you want to retort?
Yeah, I'm having a little trepidation over here, just a little bit.
Go ahead.
So first, I'm gonna work my way backwards. The Jewish community is successful because the Jewish community focuses on the Jewish community. And then as a result of them focusing on the Jewish community and building banks, et cetera, for themselves, other people get to benefit from what they built for themselves. If we go back to the Bible for a second, I have to, because I'm a pastor. The Lord wanted to bless Israel for Israel, right? Israel they were to serve themselves. They were to build communities. They were to do all of these things. Unfortunately, they didn't do that well. And as a result, if we look in Jeremiah, he turns them over and they're in Babylon for all of these years. And then he tells them, hey, serve where you are, et cetera, et cetera. But I absolutely 100% believe and stand on the fact that Black communities should focus first on Black communities, and those who benefit from that. But here's the truth. I'm not worried about who benefits from that as it relates to outside of my culture. And that doesn't mean that I hate them. It doesn't mean that I don't want people to succeed. It doesn't mean any of that. An old Asian, I cannot remember his name, but he was on CNN one day. He says, listen, Asians don't hate anybody. He said, here's the problem with the Negro in America. He said, you care too much about other people. It's not that we don't care about other people. We focus on our community. And this is why we're successful. This is why we walk in gas stations and hair salons and everything all over the world, and they rocking it in a community, in a country where we were placed in, built, and now don't have anything. I think I'm gonna say this, and somebody might smack me in the face. I think one of the worst things that ever happened to the Black community is integration, right? One of the worst things in the world that's ever happened to the Black community is integration, in that Not that we shouldn't be reconciled, because here we go again, back to being a pastor. The Lord wants us to be reconciled. He wants all humankind to come together and love each other. He wants us to be family. Absolutely, I 100% agree with that. The reason why I think the integration was an issue is because we've been begging white people for a long time to have a seat at their table instead of creating the tables that we have in front of us. We owned our own gas stations. We owned our own community stores. We owned our own farms. We owned our own grocery stores. And then we thought that the Woolworth tea was going to taste better than the tea that we were selling in our community. And we fought to sit at their table and didn't even go to their restaurants. And now we created this system where we're continuing to beg for things that we could create ourselves. We got some of the world's brightest minds, W.E.B. Du Bois, Booker T. Washington. Like, we had some of the greatest minds in education to create our path of education. And then we said, well, we need to go to your schools. No, we need access to the same things that you have, but we don't have to go to our schools because, quite frankly, the teachers in my community understand me better. They understand where I'm from. I teach in the inner city community as a special education teacher. The reason, going to what Tori said, that I teach in the special education community, particularly inclusion, is because a lot of our Black and brown boys are being put into IEPs, and there's nothing wrong with them, right? They're being put into this system that would suggest that they're stupid, they're dumb, they can't be anything, and we're teaching them to be lazy and not think as the Black kings and queens that they are. So I absolutely believe that we need to invest, come in, jump into our community first, and those who benefit from that, God bless.
Okay,
Tori,
Tori,
hold up.
Go ahead, respond real quick.
But Tori, there are some things that I agree with you on. Okay, so there's something that I agree with you on.
This is the thing. We need to put some definitions next to this, okay? Because I don't want what I said to get misconstrued. Now, what I said was that we can build for ourselves and have ourselves in mind, but it's also to be utilized by other communities. 1, 2. Integration being the worst thing that happened to the African American community. Let's go ahead and go back to the Tower of Babel. We were together as one people from the very beginning. We were not Black, white, Asian, or Hispanic from the very beginning. And what did God say as to why our language was scattered? Our language was scattered because he said, on one accord, there is nothing that they cannot do. So unfortunately, I'm not a part of the sect that says that integration was the worst thing that has happened to the African American community. Now, I believe and I agree with you in that dependency on the system is the worst thing that has happened to the African American community, is because in some instances, we took a help and we made it a crutch. We turned it into a cast, and we have been living on that for a very long time. However, to say that gaining access, which is what integration was, gaining access to better school systems, which is what was happening when integration happened. May I remind you that we were getting the leftover of the books and everything else that was there. So I'm not saying that we should not utilize our own things first, such as HBCUs and things of that nature. That's not what I'm saying. What I am saying, however, and I can't agree that integration is the worst thing that has happened to us, because it's a very separatist mentality that is very anti the beginning of how we were created anyway, and the beginning of how we came to be. And so with that being said, absolutely agree. We can focus on our community first, no problem. But we do not focus on our community alone, because that's not even the way that Christians operate.
All right. Y'all talk, this is good. Let Jared jump in here. Marie, you want to jump in here?
I'm just gonna say,
Jared been itching. Jared been itching up in my top left corner. Go ahead, Jared.
I'm just gonna say the common denominator, economics, for dealing with financial literacy. So I think that's something that's really important. So whatever school you subscribe to, whether it's the school of Tori or the school of Pastor Lou, there is a middle ground. And access, we need to throw that in there too. But let me answer the first part of the question. I'll leave that to Tori and Pastor Lou. So why protest though? Because a lot of times when we think about the political process and civic engagement, we attribute it only to voting, okay? So voting, something I learned when I was pursuing my bachelor's and I got in political science and communications. I mean, that's the bare minimum you can do. We fought for the right, we got it. I don't want to minimize it, but that is the bare minimum in regard to civic engagement that there is. So whether you're doing a peaceful protest, whether you are rioting, they said a riot is what the language of the unheard. So I'm not telling you to go out and riot and destroy stuff, but whether you're protesting or whether you're out doing just anything, that's why you need to protest, because there's more to civic engagement than you just voting, and you're not even doing that. And I'm done.
Right.
I just wanted to kind of break a few things down very quickly. Number one, when we're talking about the Jewish community, we're talking about a community that participated in usury during the medieval times and got reparations, something that we have never seen. That also participated in slavery and uprising in the Confederacy. So when we talk about other people, I think we have to put in the context that this is one of my problems that I have with putting other groups in with us, is that the majority of ethnic groups, I love them, appreciate them. They are the children of God. They have stepped on the backs of Black people to get what they want. And generally approach us, I don't even like the word ally. I think if you're going to approach the Black community, you need to be a co-conspirator. You're going to go down with us. You're in it for our benefit because we're at the back of the line still. And we're just tired of waiting and having people cut line in front of us. I'm just talking about my experience. As far as the integration, I have friends who went to certain schools here in my city that had textbooks that were 20 years old. Integration didn't fix anything as far as education. As a matter of fact, we're still heavily segregated here in the South when it comes to resources and allocation of budget funds for school systems. And one of the things that we went through here locally through the state of Tennessee is even for our kids who have disabilities, if they're African American, they were 5 times more likely to get suspended or kicked out of school with a disability for a behavioral issue in comparison to their white counterparts or even their Latino counterparts. So I think I just want to clarify some things that people are ahead of us. If you go back and look at the Naturalization Act and the 1935 New Deal, America has lifted up white people, European people, all kinds of people to give them land, benefits, money, access, whereas we here in the Black experience, even the ghettos that we live in weren't even originally designed for us. They were housing developed for white people who could live in them with the entirety of their family. There was no separation of the father from the children in public housing when it was a public good for white America. You only see a difference when Black people are pushed into these ghettos for the building of suburbs from the 1935 New Deal with FDR that literally built white wealth at the federal, state, local level. A good book on that is, oh my goodness, I'm so sorry. I'm so passionate about this, but yeah, that's just my commentary.
If you think about it, just drop it later.
Yeah, Black people need to focus on Black people. That's my
I just like to put this last piece in and I'm going to drop the mic on this. Jesus did say in Matthew 15 that I came to the lost sheep of Israel first, right? Like that. I just want to say that it's okay for us to go to our people first and be solely focused on them, right? Again, Tori, I'm not saying that all people don't matter. I'm just saying that it is all right for us to focus on family. And then whoever benefits from us focus on a family, that is what it is. But it's not, my focus isn't who will benefit outside of us.
And that book is The Color of Law by Richard Rothstein. So check that out. All right. Anybody else wanted to jump in on this question before we move on? This is good, y'all.
And Tori, I love you, by the way.
It's all love. There's more than one way to skin a cat.
All right. So, Jared, you alluded to something in your commentary as it related to rioting in connection with protests. So my question real quickly is, as you all see it, is there any place in the movement for rioting, or should we be condemning any rioting as counterproductive to the movement? Come on, I see you. I see you, Marie. I see you.
Black Panther Party on the panel said that rioting goes everywhere.
I was about to say that. First of all, rioting is language that was given to us by media, and again targeted at an African American community, Black Americans, right? It's not rioting; it's rebellion, right? That is what this is. This is rebelling against a system that has put their neck on us for centuries, right? And people are tired. Let's go to scripture. Out of the abundance of the heart, the mouth speaks, which means that there's been so much I've held back that there's an explosion. And what we are seeing now is exploding Black hearts all over the street and all over our communities. And now people want to call it rioting. However, when we're at a soccer stadium and white people are over that joker, turning tables over, turning cars over, blowing up cars and starting fires, they're enthusiastic and exuberant about the win. When we pull a statue down of a man who represents rape, pillage, suffrage, slavery, we are rioting? Come on, son. Again, we see again in plain sight the skewed lens of America. That's all I got right now.
Okay.
So according to your question, is there a place for rioting in the movement? Nah. And the reason why there is no place for rioting is because of the very definition that Pastor Lou actually said, what rioting is. There is no place there for that. I don't mind targeted rebellion, but for you to blow down your own stuff, that makes no sense to me. When you are attacking your own community, that makes no sense to me. There is no place to burn down Black businesses that you're trying to uplift. There is no place for that, because then Black people are still having to rebuild that Black business. I think that we cannot be so tailored towards the advancement of Black people that we also aren't careful not to hurt our own Black people. And some of that you saw actually over the past couple months, which has only been my dissension with the rioting, is that if you are to riot, you should also be very careful the businesses that you are choosing to attack, or that you are choosing to loot and you are choosing to destroy. If you're going to target people that have kept you oppressed, sure. If we must, target the white community, target the government federal buildings. What did the pawn shop do to you as to why we're blowing up the pawn shop? What did your cousin's mom and pop shop do to you as to why now your cousin has to rebuild? I think that we can't be so given to anger that we are without care about how we target our efforts. I think that if we're going to do that, even a lot of people like to talk about the Tea Party. Yeah, they blew up the harbor that had the tea. They didn't go and blow up somebody else's house. It's a targeted focus. So if we're going to target the focus, then sure, targeted rebellion is absolutely necessary. But rioting in the general sense of the term and the way that it's been defined in the public, no, there's no place for rioting.
Okay, thank you. Hold 1 second, Marie. So I do want somebody, Marie, maybe you'll be that one somebody, but Tori does bring up a point, and I'm not choosing a side right now. I'm just facilitating this conversation. But she brought up a point about, because, and the reason I think this is a poignant question, because of the conversation we just left about creating wealth within our own communities. So is there something to be said about, okay, rioting or rebellion, and doing it in a way that does not undo what we said we need to do in order to redress our situation? So whoever wants to speak to that at some point, I'd love to hear. So go ahead, Marie.
Yes, I would have to agree that I believe, number one, that there is a place for rioting in the movement. America has gotten everything it wants at the end of a gun. So it's the language that it understands, unfortunately, is some level of violence. I think property violence is, to me, minimal when it is in comparison to our lives. Black lives over property. Um, but I think that we need to have responsible, seasoned activists in our community that when we do go to the streets and we do decide to make a executive decision to riot, that yes, we are not going to do that in our communities. We're going to take that into places to where the city or the government is going to feel some level of pressure, but there also needs to be a planning in doing that. As a community activist and organizer, you better have some bail money, provisions, there are many things that you have to consider because of course, when you do decide to do that, unless it's just a massive situation, you will be targeted as a response by the government. So I think it's something that shouldn't just be spontaneous because of the potential dangers as far as people rioting in their own communities, hurting businesses that have done nothing. But I will say forever that there is a place for it. And I think if we really just be honest, protesting along with just this sweet sentiment never has gotten the response that we really needed from the American government. I think even some of the shifts in the needle moving that we've seen right now is because people have not only been rioting, but they've been rioting for weeks now. So people have been tearing up the streets for so long. At this point, there's no longer a need to ignore what's going on. It's just, this is a temporary situation. So I would have to say that I'm never going to speak against anybody that riots. I just want them to make sure that they're not going to burn down their own community and that they have provisions if they choose to do so.
I like to jump
Bring
in
up a
on
good
that,
point of
but,
provision, though. That provision point is very important. So just a quick question, you can go and piggyback off of this. Can we afford to riot? Is the question.
That's a great.
Absolutely.
I think that it's a necessary sacrifice. When I like to point out that the Wendy's that burns down, that was burned down during the riots that we saw on TV was not owned by a black man. I like to point out that Target is not owned by a black man. I like to point out that the protests and things that are done at Walmart are at companies that are not owned by black people. So when we say that burning up our community, unless it's a mom and pop store that's owned by my cousin, then 9 times out of 10, it's probably not owned by somebody in my cultural family. That's one of the things that I wanted to say. In our community, going back to what Marie says, whenever we get together to protest, I can promise you we've had long, drawn-out conversations about what we're going to do and what the strategy is. For example, in my community, there's a monument sitting in the middle of town square that the city has said for a long time they don't know whether anybody owns it. And so because they didn't know who owned it, we strategically went behind the gate around the monument to get the city to issue trespassing charges. Why? Because if the city issued trespassing charges, there had to be a person to say that this is a violation and they're on my property. So when they came and said that you were trespassing, the first question was, who is the plaintiff? Then they said, oh, it's the city and we own it. So you can remove it, right? So there are things, there's strategy behind some of the things that we're looking at as rioting that's causing some other things to happen. We had a owner of a Chick-fil-A in our area who came in and pretty much got rid of all of the black leadership at his Chick-fil-A. We boycotted for 2 days. They lost more than almost $300,000. You know what they then did? They got us on the phone, Chick-fil-A corporate, not Chick-fil-A local. They got us on the phone and said, what do we need to do to make this better? They began to invest in our community and now have a new owner that looks like us, that speaks for us, and that understands the community that he's in. So there are a lot of things that have to happen, boycotting, protesting, rioting. I call it righteous rebellion, rioting that will begin to make things happen. I agree with Marie in that we have to make sure that we're strategic. But as it relates to a Wendy's that's not owned by our community, that's burnt down, they're probably going to hire black people to rebuild that. So I call that job creation.
To add to the conversation, rioting has had its place throughout American history, period. So let's
July
not
4th
say
is a celebration of rioting.
this group, that group. So that's something that's not new. If you listen to, if you wait until February, you want to, go through some Black history, right? You're like, wow, it sounds like they're here today in 2020 because the same things were happening and we're dealing with. But my point of saying that is there's more to the movement than rioting. So I know we talking about this right now, but let's not get stuck on that. God knows there's so many other things in other areas, even talking about access and being in different places, doing different things, building up our own structures. And structures, again, as Lou said, obviously we need to support ourselves. But as Tori said, I mean, yeah, it should be for the good of the entire community as well. Yeah, I just want to mention that. But rioting, you just want to make it this. I mean, there's criminality involved with it, but just want to make it this thing and attribute to this one group when that is they didn't. We weren't taught how to riot. Okay, that's something that's an American feature. That's we learned that from my history. All right, I am an American. All right, we learned this in grade school going forward. But I mean that's all I have to add.
Yeah. Anybody else? All right. Y'all try to do what y'all can without rioting. Okay. You like, look at Lou. Look at Lou. All right.
I'm not a fan of listen.
rioting.
Listen, here's the
You
deal.
ain't gonna
Again,
find me.
I haven't been in a riot in all of my years of protesting. So let me say that very clear. Nothing that we have led has ever ended in a riot or in anything like that, even if some statues fell. So I want to make that very clear. Again, we also have to define what rioting is. Much of what we're doing in the streets over these since Brother Floyd's death has not been rioting. Right? It's been rebellion labeled as rioting by mainstream media because since Birth of a Nation produced in 1915, that is the imagery that they want Black people to have.
Right. And so, and we spoke to that a little earlier about the dehumanization piece, and they're wild and crazy and can't be controlled. So I got you. All right. As you all see it, what should non-Blacks be doing and saying to help affect change right now?
They don't have to say anything. We don't really need you to talk. What I would rather you do is to work within the structure that you currently know is broken, that you currently know undermines the underprivileged and continues to run over people. At this point, actions speak louder than words, so please hold your tongue. We will acknowledge you when we have gotten further about. But for the time being, not much really needs to be said as far as non-Blacks are concerned. I would rather you take the opportunity to ask someone for knowledge and for understanding, to say, what is it that I don't see? So that you may begin to see the things. So therefore you can kind of see where the fractures in the system are. And then once you see those fractures, see a need, fill a need, okay? Go on ahead and start moving the things around. Kind of similar to what Pastor Lou here said, when you saw that money was being gone, these are our issues. Can you resolve the issues? And then get to work, and then we'll talk later, but no talking really.
I would like to say,
go ahead, Jack. Pastor.
I just want to say I agree with what Tori said. We don't need you to say nothing, because in actuality, you can't relate. You don't understand. Listening is very vital. And in the process of listening, because when you can begin to identify where we are or what we're going through, maybe then you can have something valuable to say. But I've entertained, or I've ran into conversations that go left field, because you can't feel my Black brothers and sisters. I can go back to a situation when the 5 police officers in Dallas, Texas were killed. I had an encounter with some police officers in Louisville, Kentucky. And that moment, I seen how the racial profiling took place. As I was riding, Pastor Jennings, this is what I discovered. As much as I love my Caucasian brothers and sisters, they could not understand how I felt to be racially profiled. They couldn't understand what made tears come out of my eyes, because I'm a country boy that spoke to everybody, knew the police officers. But when you go into a different location, they don't know you. And then they look at you because of the color of your skin. And so now, yeah, you have to listen. Maybe for so long they've been trying to understand, but they can't see where we are. So I would say listen.
Okay.
So I definitely need you to talk. I don't need you to talk to us, though. I need you to talk to your community. I need you to talk to your community after you recognize your privilege. I think that one of the biggest things that we deal with is not unrecognized privilege, but an unwillingness to admit that you're born into privilege. And so some of our fight is having conversations with our white brothers and sisters like, but I didn't do that to you, but you benefited from it, right? And you're still benefiting from it, and you're still using it. I need you to recognize what privilege is, why it affects us so much. And then once you recognize that, I need you to go and talk to your contemporaries. So you need to listen to us. You need to recognize what we're talking about, understand what we're talking about, and then take that conversation into your community and hopefully begin to spark some conversations in there that begin to change the hearts of men in your community. Because the truth of the matter is that's where we need you the most. I don't need you to, here's the thing, I don't need you to explain what you think. I don't need to hear your opinion on why we should do what we do, especially when you haven't recognized my issue in the first place, right? So I don't need you to talk to us. I need you to talk to someone else. Now, I have friends. I want to say this because I might have come off very hard tonight. I have white friends. Well, that sounds funny coming from us, right? They'll say that quick. I got black friends. I have white brothers and white sisters. I want to give you some background. I am a church planted by Southern Baptists. So if you know anything about Southern Baptists, you know that there is a long, steeping history of race issues. I was searched by some white deacons at a church in the Southern Baptist Convention as a black pastor in the Southern Baptist Convention. So I want you to understand that even in the church, I've experienced this, but in that I was there, like Tori said, to become a part of a broken system, to hopefully be a voice that will begin to reconcile people together so that we as a church and the body, both white, black, all nations, can come together and say, yo, this is a real issue. However, that didn't work, but I did gain some white friends and brothers out of that who, while they did not understand what we were saying, would have conversations with me about, hey, Lou, help me understand what you're feeling. And to this day, those white brothers and sisters call me when something's going on, like, Lou, praying for you and praying for your community, but they don't just do that because that's not enough. They take that same language to their Facebook page with their contemporaries and say what's going on is crazy, what's going, at the risk of some of those friends walking away from them. We need white people to not just listen to us, talk to their contemporaries, and change their hearts, but we also need them to sacrifice some of the amenities that privilege has given you in order to empathize with a human people who have been oppressed and are still hurting.
Can I just chime in really quick? And I know this might sound a little far-fetched, but at this point or stage in my life, I'm not even concerned with what other races are even thinking or saying right now. I'm kind of in a place where I'm tired of explaining, or I'm tired of you repeatedly seeing the same thing I'm seeing, but there is no difference. There is no change. And yeah, you can express to me all day long that you care and you're concerned, and yeah, I'll take that. But at the end of the day, you still go home to your people. You still worship with your people. You still sit on boards with your people and play this game that my people can't even get a clear set of rules to, so we can even get on the board. So I'm almost like, hey, we've been putting so much focus on them for so long that it is time to now shine the light on us. And I know that might kind of contradict what I said earlier about learning the game and the rules and everything. But at this point, I'm just like, I'm tired of explaining myself to them. Like, I really don't care what they do at this point. I think that there needs to be a sole focus right now on what can we do as individuals and with our families and church members and just whatever, whomever we are connected to at this point, because I'm tired of explaining it.
Can I jump in? All right, so there is a role, and I'm not shutting down any group that wants to educate themselves. Okay, there is a role, and the role number one is back to something I said early in the beginning, just to not be tone deaf. So we're talking about an education here. Restructuring what you think is normal per se. But let's say like, 'cause I want to kind of make this point. This is something that when I learned when I was in college, that really shifted my thinking. When you see somebody that's racist, right? You know who they are. You can see them from a mile away. You know how to deal with that person. There's somebody that's more dangerous, in my opinion, than someone that's racist. It's someone that's culturally incompetent. So they don't understand me. They can't empathize. Someone that doesn't can't relate, to put it in layman's terms. So yes, there's a role for everybody. I'm not shutting nobody out. I love everybody. And guess what? Check this out. You need to become culturally competent. Okay, so let's not shut people out. If they want to seek to understand, let's not harden our hearts. Again, don't come at me wrong and throw your stones at me. But no. You need to understand. Let somebody get some cultural competence. I'm not saying it's your job to go out and educate everybody you come across. No, because as Miss Jesse, you said a lot of people may share the sentiment, I'm fed up. So I'm saying, I'm not saying for you to go out and you going out and you trying to educate everybody, but if you come across somebody genuinely, you feel like you can, hey, just don't be tone deaf. This is how so you should be able to, somebody, they want to come to you genuinely and you see they have a genuine heart. Please explain yourself, please. So they can in turn not be tone deaf, and two, maybe they can get some confidence about the Black culture, because they don't understand our experience, our life for a lot of people. So it's a matter of introducing them to our culture and our experience, and more so opening their eye to what daily life is for us, as opposed to the dominant society that we find ourselves assimilating into on a daily basis.
And I hear you, my brother, and I totally agree. If someone would come to me with a genuine heart and would, like some understanding, I'd be more than willing to talk to them. Please don't get it twisted. What I'm saying is that with everything that is out here, with the video recordings, you saw George Floyd's, saying, I can't breathe, knee in the neck. I mean, we saw all of that. That doesn't need an explanation. That's kind of like, it's there. What else can I say? But yet you still have people that don't understand why the rebellions took place or why people responded the way they did. So I'm like, if it's blatantly in front of you and you still don't understand, I don't know if I'm as willing to waste my breath or time trying to explain that to you.
I don't think that you're wrong. I think that that there is a place when all of us are just tired. And this is where James Baldwin's statement to be conscious in America, 100% conscious in America, is to literally be angry all the time, which is why I find myself even with the type of work that I'm asked to do, whether that is to be on a panel on CBN and be the only Black person there that is speaking for a Democratic voice, which I'm not even a registered Democrat, but here I am being slaughtered in the comments. You have this time, you have this time where you're just tired. And I think that the thing that helps me specifically is that I come to the understanding that the information that we know about the Black lifestyle in America is literally a shattering of the foundation of who they see themselves as and who they are taught to be. So it's like, I am raised to believe that the police will always treat me well. And according to my life experiences and to my community, that has always been the case. Because the police, that's my aunt, that's my uncle. You have a lot of people that are like, we were raised this way. Not only that, you also have the school system that reinforces these lies. And then all of a sudden, they're 25 and they see George Floyd's video. And then they're like, what is this? Which is why you have so many white people so angry, because they're just now coming to the realization that the person that they thought they were, they're not. And so when you put into context the fact that you are literally questioning the very foundation of someone's existence and historical background. I try to put that into context to give a little bit more empathy, because that's like somebody coming up to me and be like, "Sis, you're not Black," and I'm like, "What you talking?" Because my whole life experience is this. So what do you mean I'm not Black? Like your first reaction is automatically to push against it, because you're like, this is not what I know to be true. And so that's kind of what helps me be able to walk through those processes. But once again, know thyself. Okay, to thine own self be true. So if you know that this conversation is not for you, I respect every person that's like, listen, I don't mind you getting educated, but I am not the teacher. I respect that, because what you do is that you would give them a better resource than yourself, especially where you are, for you to be able to be like, listen, I'm just tired right now, especially with the back-to-back things. You got Maude, you have the people that are being lynched. Like, literally, I had to step back, because in the midst of us protesting, people are hanging from trees in Central Park. Like, so you have to know, this is where I disconnect, because at this point, my grace, my long suffering, my patience is gone. So that's wisdom. I commend you.
Listen, I want to jump on what Tori just said, going backwards from her conversation. And I'll leave the last piece last, but I'm good with empathy until you ignorantly resist, right? I can empathetically approach the conversation. If you look at some of the footage from our protests, you'll see me in the middle of conversations with people who really don't understand why in the world we're doing the Confederate monument thing. And while others are screaming over my shoulder, I'm like, listen, everybody has a right to speak. The same rights that we're fighting for, we cannot say you can't say what you say. However, I'm gonna meet you with some education on what you're saying ignorantly, so that we can move forward. That. So I'm good with empathy for a community who doesn't understand until you ignorantly resist, right? But she also mentioned something else, mental health, like her stepping back. I can't tell you, I'm talking Trayvon Martin, Oscar Grant, Sean Bell, Eric Gardner, Alton Sterling. Now listen, when we get to Eric Gardner and Alton Sterling and Philando Castile, you got to understand, I'm watching the murder and these people die on camera. I'm looking at it. I remember vividly the blood gushing from Alton Sterling's chest when they shot him. Like, these are the things. So now it's even bigger. So I'm dealing with the mental health issues in my community from seeing not my case, but seeing my father beat up my mother. I'm dealing with the mental issues and the PTSD from my community of seeing my cousin shot up or stabbed. I'm dealing with the issues that I don't know what, the only time I eat is at school for lunch and breakfast. I'm dealing with all those things. And then I'm on social media and I'm watching the people that represent the government and the state that's supposed to be helping me also kill me. Then I have to have a conversation with you about why I'm mad about that. Right? So my head is hurting. I'm screaming inside. And I've been in situations where I literally just stared at the person and just like a tear fell, because I'm like, yeah, I can't believe you're this ignorant. Like, I can't believe you're just not getting it. So that thing. Now, the last thing that I'm gonna say is this. She said something. The next to last thing, she said something about us being in this country. Like, before we learn our ABCs, unless parents are teaching us that, we learn the Pledge of Allegiance and My Country 'Tis of Thee. From the ages of 5 up, we are pledging allegiance to a flag that does not necessarily cover us, right? We are singing My 'Tis of Thee for a country that wasn't including us in the writing of that song. And then lastly, we ignorantly, this goes to something Jared probably would jump on, and Tori or whoever, this whole I'm a Democrat because I'm Black and not a Republican because I'm Black. Like, yo, I don't ascribe to either party. I am an issues person, whatever. But if we go to the historicity of the party, then we would see that Republican Party, who was where most of the Black senators were, where the Black politicians were, etc. Historically, something shifted somewhere along the line. And now we have this thing where we ignorantly listen. We don't even look at who we voting for. We ask who's on the Democratic ticket, and people literally go into the booth and vote all D's. That is also an ignorant issue, an issue of ignorance within our community. We are voting for people who use Black language to get into a White House and forget all about you.
Mm.
That now I'm done. I'm done. Yeah, that was all of my notes.
I mean, that's really good, and that's actually what drove me to get my master's in public administration with my postmasters in American politics, and that's just because you can't as somebody who wants to vote, you have to know why you're voting. Like that is a very precious thing. So as voting, if you don't know what gerrymandering is, you're putting yourself already at a disadvantage. You need to know why moving the voting lines and the county lines is going to negatively affect your vote. It takes your vote from being a major vote to being a minor whisper. And it doesn't matter how you vote. You need to understand why this current administration asking the federal government if our electoral college can have independent votes is a huge issue. Like you should literally be up in arms because it is dismantling the Republican democracy that we have, because we're not a democracy. Let's know our history. And so, right. So if you don't know why these things are happening, this is why, once again, understanding the system is very important, because these are slight adjustments. We saw after Barack Obama's first win, North Carolina went into overdrive with gerrymandering, with predominantly Republican House and Senate. They was like, oh no. We saw what happened. So now you have all of this moving going about, and then you have a decrease in the voting booths and all this other things. So you have to be cognizant of how the system operates, which is why we can't just operate from without. But also going back to my brother here, you have to know, you must know, and you can't stress that enough. I know it's tiring. As somebody who enjoys watching politics and understanding it and dissecting it, I know I'm not the majority. However, that which you do not understand, there was blood spilt for you to be able to have a voice. I will not let my ancestors' blood cry out from the ground because I have enough privilege to where I don't feel like it's necessary for me to vote. I can't do that.
And you got to be listen, you can't vote. So for me, somebody might punch me in the face that's watching, who knows me, but I'm real. I don't vote for black faces just because you're a black face. I will vote for a white person who gets it before I vote for a black person who's assimilated.
Hashtag Kanye.
That's why when you said what you said about right, no Kanye, not Kanye at all. Kanye needs prayer and some counseling, amen. But but you mentioned Clinton earlier, Jessica. One of the things that, like, I'm not a Clinton guy either, right? Like while he was playing the saxophone and inviting Patti LaBelle to the White House, Rwanda, people in Rwanda were being slaughtered, and America didn't jump in, and we could have, right? Like he propagated that, right? Like there's a lot of things that happen, and again, I think, listen, man, we have been holding and grabbing for hope for so long. Anybody who uses the right language, we endear and bring to the table to have turkey and yams and macaroni and cheese with us. And we got to do a lot more vetting of these people that we're putting into office. What Biden said, while I understood what he was saying, is actually a thought process. When he said to Charlemagne, if you don't vote for me, you're not black, yo, that tells us the hot sauce in our bag, Hillary Clinton said that, yo, we should be offended by those types of conversations, because it says that we are ignorant enough to vote for you just because you're using language that's going to make us feel good and move in your direction. There's things that we need to pay attention to in this administration. Trump, I don't like. Trump, I don't think should be president. Trump, I think, is very calculated and strategic, and is not as dumb as people think he is, right? The reality is there's so much in place for us to take advantage of right now, like OPM, other people's money, like opportunity zones, buying in areas that are going to give you a huge tax advantage 10 years from now. You understand that this man put in place, if you buy a building in an opportunity zone, you get to sell that mug 10 years from now tax-free. These are things, I'm going to tell you this, I don't think the Lord orchestrated the pandemic. I don't think that he said, yo, let's make everybody sick. But I do want to tell you, he's given us an opportunity to come up. And we are not paying attention to the solitude that God has given us to think, pay attention, and build wealth. Buy property, buy homes, start businesses. The SBA was giving away money that white people were absolutely taking advantage of. I can't tell you how many $10,000 grants went out to friends that I have in corporate world or in the investment world that I just found out about a month ago. Now, of course, I went and got me some money, but I'm just saying that these are things that are in place that while we're worried about his rhetoric, while we're worried about the stupid stuff that he's saying, we're not taking advantage of the business opportunities that his privilege has created for people that look like him, because we have an opportunity to come up and we're not coming up because we are protesting, which we should be doing. We are arguing, which we should be doing. We are fighting for rights, which we should be doing. But we should also be educating ourselves and finding out how there's a template that has been set up by capitalism that gives way for us to come up and help our own communities. And we need to find out where those loopholes are. We need to find out where those little tiny Alice in Wonderland doors are and walk through them.
So I just want to say the wealth of the wicked is stored for the righteous. Somebody got to be wicked and somebody got to be righteous.
I'm getting it.
That's a very real topic. I've been speaking to my friends about, as soon as the pandemic hit, I said, do you know what disaster gives? An opportunity. If you do not, after every major catastrophe, there's always a transfer of wealth. Shade, no shade. And I know that there's a lot of people that have lost money, that have lost businesses, because I work for ADP. So I know the financial standing of almost every small business here. Small business is what the nation is built on. Small businesses are the ones that got hurt the most. So the thing is that one larger small business that now has to shut down because they were on the other side of the catastrophe. It behooves you to become a landscaper today.
Absolutely.
Because somebody has to fill that void. Like there's a space now for you to be able to get in between and get within. And if you don't know that, then you're just using this house arrest time. Very, very unproductively. It's time for you to try to figure out, okay, Lord, what is it that you have called me to do? Because if you're not going to walk in your destiny now, you might as well go ahead and give up for the rest of your life. Now is the time. Death is ever much more nearer, and you can feel it. And so if you're not bent on doing what the Lord has called you to do right now, okay, because there are provisions. Even in a famine, he still provided that. So your economy is not the world's economy, but if you do not take the opportunity to figure out, Lord, where is it that you're sending me right now, that I may do what I need to do in order to advance the kingdom of heaven, then you are more so in the way than being helpful.
I love how this thing came around, Pastor James. In the beginning of the year, I told my church, I said, yo, listen, the Lord said that this is the year of BDO, big dreams only. And then the pandemic hit. I said, well, wait a minute, God. I know I heard you say something about big dreams only. Like, why would you shut everything down? Like, where is the best place to dream? When it's quiet, right? Like, now is the time for you to take everything that you've ever thought about, put it on paper and make it happen. We have had 3 months of nothing but opportunity to write it down, make it plain so that people can read it and run with it. And many of us now are going back to work, still dreaming. Now you got to go back to work and sit at your desk 9 to 5 every day and wish for an opportunity to be an entrepreneur. When the Lord has just given us that opportunity.
This is a good opportunity.
Hold on, Marie. Let's get Marie in here, and then Jared, and then that's gonna have to be the last on this.
You're gonna have to do a part 2, Doc.
Yeah. Come on, Marie.
I just wanted to say that one of the things I asked God for was to give me an understanding of what this year was going to be for me in the context of where I live. And he said opportunity. And I, going through COVID, I'm like, opportunity, God, what in the world, where is there opportunity in seeing an economy crumbling before our very eyes and businesses closing down and people getting sick? Where is there an opportunity? And I love how this panel has kind of shifted from the original question, which has to deal with other people. I think this is a time for Black people to do some digging within. Audre Lorde said that an act of political warfare is self-care. So this is an opportunity where we get to take a step back and take care of ourselves and think about how we really want to move forward as a people and as community. And to also acknowledge, yes, what are the resources that have come about in this time that we can educate ourselves and one another on to take full advantage of. So when we walk out of this season, you know, when you think about a phoenix that rise, where does it rise from? Ashes. It arises from an ashes, meaning that something had to die, it had to burn, it had to be disseminated before there can be a new rising. And so I believe that Black people have an opportunity to have a new rising out of this season if we take a step back and utilize this for the purposes of educating ourselves and our people and seeing how we can give me the loot.
Awesome. Come on, Jared.
I say, as activist Michael Render, we go by Killer Mike, said something I've been saying all the time: plot, plan, strategize, organize, and mobilize. So I just wanted to give a brief plug, at least for something that we're doing in the Hampton Roads area. So again, of 200 plus men, association with Black Brand, the Hispanic Chamber of Commerce, so many different things, but we're working on a comprehensive list to build a comprehensive list again of all the Black owned businesses within the Hampton Roads area, and even to just other, like Tori, if we're ascribing to your school, even other people, because again, we don't want to isolate ourselves, but we do want to highlight what we have. So it also includes SWAMs, if you know what that means, small woman and minority-owned businesses. So for those that are listening within Facebook, I'm going to put the link there right now. We're just obtaining some data at this point. We're going to come up with this huge online database. So I'm going to share that. So please, if you know someone, if you know a friend, you said a phoenix rise out of the ashes, now is the time for us to identify clearly a comprehensive list who, and everybody's here. So again, as may we're describing Pastor Lou, I mean, you got to be able to invest and try to let that money circulate in your own community as well. So I'm going to go ahead and put that within the Facebook live chat for everybody. If you're within the Hampton Roads area, please, even if you're not, you can put your information in there, but I would love for you guys to support. Now is the time. Now's the time.
I'd like to also say that you don't need credit to do it. I'm telling you now, it's out there for you, buddy. Believe it.
All right, I gotta hit this question before we get out of here. What do you believe the church's role in the current movement should be, and are you satisfied that it's happening?
Present. That's the role that the current church should have. It should be present. Present doesn't mean that you understand everything. Present doesn't mean that you have all the answers. It means that you are there to heal, help, speak to, minister to, help organize, bring sanity to, etc. I believe that justice is not separate from the gospel. It's a cry of the gospel. And so there is a gospel duty to be present in these moments as we love and endure with people. I think that if we want to find out what the church's role in this moment is, Jesus perfectly explains it in the Beatitudes. Be there, right? Be there for the people who need us to be there. Educate ourselves, and don't be afraid to have the tough conversations. One of the worst things we can do is, in our not understanding, dismiss it and say that the gospel has an answer. You're right. The gospel has an answer. That answer is eternal, and that answer is present, and it's you. And so God uses us to make way in the world, and that so we have to be present. We have to be willing to work past our comfort zone and past what it may or may not do to our offering plates.
Okay, good. Who else?
Go ahead.
Go ahead, Marie.
Yeah, go ahead.
Oh, go ahead, Pastor. I didn't know. Go ahead. I'm trying to manage the windows. Go ahead.
I have to agree with Pastor Lou. What we do understand in the Black church, the Black church plays a very important role in the Black community. One of the things that I share is that when history comes back and talk about 2020, I don't want to be a church that just was there and not active. If I can be honest, the pandemic has highlighted areas that have already been affected in our community. It has turned into a blessing that the church can now be that vessel to now meet a need. And so I agree, present at this very moment, at this very time, the church needs to stand up and not be so dismissed by the offering plate that we really miss ministry. This is a moment that families are still broken. We are dealing with the loss of loved ones, but they can't even visit because of the pandemic. And so the church has been a psychiatrist. It has been a place of refuge. It has been a place of comfort. And so now trying to manage all of that, we have older people that rise to the parking lot because they missed the church. Where is the church now? So in this season, I discovered going back old school is where the church, it catered to the needs of the people and not the people came to the needs of the building. That's why I see us as the church, that we are regaining our rightful place and integrity and saying, you know what, as the church, we will be that beacon, that light in the community that will say, you know what, we stand up for what's right, because the church has a great influence. Where is the church? So the Black church is bigger than just a building. So now I understand we are the church, but the Black church, it is that place that they can break away and get food. It is that place where they can get some type of comfort and some type of relief from domestic violence. So I think now the church really needs to stand up in this season more than ever.
That's good.
I would like to say, I live in Chattanooga, which is one of the most church cities in America. And I think one of the things that the church has to settle with is you have an imperative role in the movement, while it may not be to lead the movement, and be content with that. I think the church has a responsibility through the gospel of whether it is interpretation. I think we have to deal with even how we interpretate and then reverberate the gospel to our community to ensure that we are not preaching xenophobia, homophobia, white supremacy through the gospel, and begin to define the gospel in a way that really resonates with our people and the social justice issues of this time. One of my favorite scriptures is Micah 6:8. What does the Lord require of you, O man, that you do justice and mercy work and walk humbly before your God? And I believe that that is the church's work. But please understand that I believe that a lot of who God is calling forth in this time for the leadership of the movement is not coming from the church. It's these young folks who are coming from the streets who often have been overlooked by the church because they don't look a certain way, they don't dress a certain way, they're not second or third generation Kojic or Baptist or Episcopal. There are these young people who, whether you believe it or not, they watch a lot of you pastors online, even though they don't say anything. And what a lot of them are looking for is a plugging into a ministry that speaks to the issues of this generation. So the church really has such a large opportunity to be a mechanism of such support to the movement and to people in community. I just encourage pastors to be content with, just because you may not be out front like Dr. Martin Luther King and certain others, C.T. Vivian, who had an opportunity to preach here in Chattanooga, that's okay. You have a pulpit, which is a platform, and you have a responsibility, if nowhere else, right there to be able to preach the gospel, to make it relevant to your people. Just stay encouraged, my brothers and my sisters in the gospel. It is hard work. I am a pastor's daughter, so I understand a lot of people don't know how much pastors and pastors' wives do. Stay encouraged, stay in the fight with us. Please don't abandon us. We need you. We need you. Stay encouraged.
I think that this is a great time also for the church to have self-reflection, whether it's individual or collectively. There needs to be self-reflection, almost to a point of repentance, because I think this pandemic kind of revealed that a lot of us were more so attached to a building than actually being the church and being the hands and feet of Jesus. So I think that first, before we move forward with anything that we do as a church, we have to self-examine ourselves as a church, family, or body of believers, to say, hey, this is what we've done, but this is what we can no longer do. I know we can just be transparent a little bit. had did some like upgrading to the sanctuary a little before the pandemic hit, put screens up. And we're sitting in a sanctuary now that people can't even come to look at the screens or use the audio. And I'm like, yo, this is time now for the church and individuals to do some self-examination. And I believe after that takes place, after that authentic transparency takes place where we can be real, then God, the Holy Spirit, will then reveal strategies and new plans for where we are going. Because the truth is, we can't go back to what was happening. And I mean, if you believe in the higher power, if you believe in God, then it's only so long before he's going to continue to allow shepherds to lead flocks, his sheep, his children, without pulling back some covers or just putting a pause on things. So that's my personal opinion about that.
Yeah. And to take a different perspective, two things. Number one, it would be by this all men, ye are my disciples, you have love one to another. So when I say one to another, I'm saying churches and churches. So the churches, we need to have love for one another and not fighting over this, over that, over this, over that. That's one thing that I wouldn't say destroys the credibility of the church, but it doesn't help it. So us not fighting one another, but working together in love. Number one, that's how we're going to know, and other people will know, people we're trying to help and reach, that, we are God's disciples. Number two, I wrote down, I want to make sure I said it. Before Jesus ministered to all these people, what'd he do? He fed them. So what you got to do? We have to have the servant mindset. We have to meet the need of the people. We're so busy and ready to preach to somebody, tell them this and that, but you're not even meeting their need. When they're naked, you wouldn't clothe them. You're going to tell, God forbid you go to a 7-Eleven, a corner store or something, and you're going to hand somebody a tract without, but turning your nose up at them, and you're not trying to help and meet their need. So us meeting the need first, and trying to do that first, and then watch God, let God change that heart. Then that word will go out on what? Good ground.
Well, I'll go ahead and throw my 2 cents up in here. I believe that what the church needs to do is we need to understand that injustice and marginalization of the people that are in need are not Christians, okay? And that means that you may march next to an atheist. It's okay. Your sanctification is intact. You're still going to heaven. If you march next to an atheist, it's all right. And I think that when we come to that understanding of unifying with those things that make us unified, as opposed to those things that separate us, I think that we'll be able to get a lot further. I know that a lot of people believe in the separation of church and state, but the church is still affected by the state. So we're not that separate, okay? And so even as a body, we must remember that our brothers and sisters that are in need, trust me, the Holy Spirit is the one who draws. It is not your church, okay? It says that the Holy Spirit will draw all men unto himself, is how that goes. And so since we know that the Holy Spirit will do the drawing, we don't have to worry about that. If you go and you show the love of Christ, if you go and you're accepting, if you go to listen, if you go to understand and to hear, especially for those of our matriarch and patriarchs and mothers boards and deacons that have come out of the 60s and the 70s, please understand that this tidal wave is not what you have seen before. It does not mean that it lacks effectiveness. It just means that we're doing things a little bit differently. And it is of service to us that you bring a listening ear, and when asked, that you give us wisdom. Please don't withhold your wisdom for if you're only leading it, because then it balances, it causes a imbalance, if you will, with the brute strength of the young versus the wisdom of the wise. And so everyone is welcome here. But as many on the panel already said, the church may not be the forefront of this. This is not, the civil rights movement where it was birthed out of the church, so to speak. And that's okay. But once again, doing those other things, coming fellowship. Okay, that's how you are able to build that interpersonal connection, and we can't separate ourselves from those who aren't as clean as we are, especially when Jesus Christ came and sat amongst those people. To be able to work towards a very common goal. He stood up for the woman who was sleeping with everybody's husband, same as he was standing up for the 12 disciples who were shady people. Let's not be deceived. Peter had probably the same issue that our brother Kanye is facing. Okay. And so I think that we need to keep that in mind. And I think that all in all, we're in good hands.
All right.
With all state.
Wow. Wow. Oh man, listen, this has been absolutely phenomenal. Thank you all so much. Like this was really rich, for real. And you all have really y'all blessed me. And I'm sure you've been blessing this audience. They've been liking it. I see the comments, so they've been feeling it and really been getting something out of it. So thank you all so much. Yeah, we may have to do a part 2, Pastor Lou, because
we got to go into
I didn't even get to all my questions, but it's cool because I love the way that the conversation just kind of organically went where it needed to go. And so again, thank you all so much. If y'all, the listening audience, if y'all can do me a favor, come on, can we get those clap emojis? Can we get some hearts, some likes? Come on, show some love to our wonderful panel tonight. Listen, last thing I'm going to do, everybody on the panel, you got 10 seconds. I need a life-changing word in 10 seconds. So, no, but in closing, whatever you want to say in a parting word, in about 10, 15 seconds, just go. Whatever's on your heart, whatever you feel like needs to be said. Go ahead, Jared. I see you.
Plot, plan, organize, strategize, mobilize.
Thank you, sir.
It is our duty to fight for our freedom. It is our duty to win. We must love and support one another, for we have nothing to lose but our chains. Asada Shakur. Peace, family.
Thank you, Marie. Awesome. Anybody? Jump in here.
I just want to
unmute
say,
yourself, Tori. Unmute yourself.
I just want to say Mott 2020 in Chattanooga. Y'all make sure y'all go vote for Mott 2020. But I just want to say that yesterday's gone. Tomorrow doesn't exist. Today is all you have. So seize the moment. Louie Gibbs.
Sign yourself. That's what's up. Thank you, sir. Awesome.
I just want to say in this season, don't be distracted by what's being pushed in the media, but realize this is a golden opportunity to come up.
I would say just like Jesus in the Garden of Gethsemane, when the disciples were asleep, some were sitting, some were sleeping. He probably stood up and said, somebody's got to do this. So this is a season where you need to tell yourself, somebody's got to do this, and that somebody's you.
Awesome.
You have been called for such a time as this.
Listen, that's the fewest words I've ever heard Tori say in my life. Right there. That is her Jesus whip. That is Tori's Jesus whip.
Block, bliggity, block, block, block.
Oh, man. Thank y'all. Thank y'all again. Thank y'all so much. Well, thank y'all for joining us tonight. This has been awesome. We pray that you were blessed by it. And we're out of here. So God bless you. Have a wonderful weekend. And let's get out here and let's do some good. Let's let our light shine so that we're not just the church on the corner or down the street, but we're the church in the street making a difference in the lives of people. All right. Thank y'all. Love y'all. We out of here.